Yeah, Happy New Year and welcome, Matthias.
Happy New Year. How how was how were the holidays for you?
Oh, quite nice. I've been in Oslo and in Copenhagen. Quite interesting. You will be there too in some months on this Power BI cruise.
Oh yes. When I told my wife about it, she was a bit suspicious, and um, I had to take a few attempts to explain the idea of a Power BI conference on a boat. Um,
It was actually I actually used the same boat for moving from Copenhagen to Oslo. So this is like this Crown Seaways is also regular boat between
all right. Yeah.
the two cities, and we also stayed there overnight around New Year and spent New Year in Oslo. So yeah, there
Fantastic.
are rooms for conferences, so I can really imagine that it might be nice there, and it's like more like a ferry. It's more better than a standard ferry, but it's still ferry business. So it's not like from the ecological view, like the evil cruise ships. No, it's more like a transport.
All right. Yeah, no, we should probably explain to anyone listening. This is Power BI Cruise happening, I think, April 24th to 26th. Um,
Mm.
it's a Power BI conference on a boat or on a ship, probably, going from
Mm.
Copenhagen to Oslo and back. And I'm presenting, talking about tabular model scripting now. One of the cool things of that is all sessions will be 3 hours long, so which is rather unusual. Uh, Very deep dive. Some sessions will be offline because they don't have an internet connection the whole time. So obviously the presenters need to accommodate for that. So yeah, I hope lots of people sign up, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, sounds interesting. So I don't know if I will actually join because I'm not self-employed yet. Have to check it up. But yeah, like 3 hours with you or with Mark Leifeld or other guys, then Stefan Reze and Andrea Tusa and also some other. So I posted the link in the chat. So it would be great, like just 3 hours of data modeling with pros or about versioning and scripting, what you do. Sounds very nice, and I think everyone can learn there. Yeah, just something I noticed. And yeah, this was the advertisement block. If you have anything more, just just say it. But I think you have
Well,
some
a month
news
a
on the
month
tool.
before that, we've got SQL Bits, obviously, which
Yeah, in
arguably is
Wales.
the highlight in a SQL and Power BI world in Europe every year. I'm assuming you're going. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm certainly. Uh, it's also going to be the very first SQL Bits I'll be presenting at, which I'm super excited about. Um,
Okay, nice. Then
yeah.
the Wales one, yeah, it's not so. I think this is something where the timing is again not so good for me, but I will check it. Cannot promise that I will visit this, but it's also online, right? Maybe I can make this.
It was hybrid 22.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they do the same thing. But obviously, you only get the real,
yeah.
real
It would
experience.
be better to be there. I also have never been in Wales.
Yeah.
Might be nice, and of course worth visiting. Yeah, the conferences are coming up. We are looking forward to this. And Matthias, you are a speaker lots of times nowadays in different conferences and formats. So Power BI tools getting conquer the world. Yeah, hello Donald. Donald is also here. Also Pablo is
Hi,
watching us
Donald.
too. Hello Pablo, you can join the Q&A if you want when you unmute yourself later. But I think first I will let Matthias talk about the tools and the new release. I think you
Yes.
promised a new release, right?
Yes.
Great. And then here
Here
is
you
your
go.
screen.
And that's what we're looking at here. I went dark theme on my desktop, so that's why I hope you can see it. Let me know if I should increase the font size a little bit. Nonetheless, this is the latest release showing up on GitHub on the pbi-tools repo, 1.0 release candidate 2, which I pushed out last night, literally just before midnight, as you can see. And just wanted to talk about this a little bit. There are a few interesting new features in there, which I want to demo. Other than that, it's got a bit of an interesting history. If you look at the previous releases, so obviously we had that one yesterday. If you scroll down here, there were basically 6 or 7 preview releases, which I had marked as pre-release. And finally, yesterday, I decided to actually make this official and move out of the pre-release stage. So basically, everything that's in RC2 now has been cooking for quite a while, and that's mostly because there are substantial new features here, which I was pretty much testing very thoroughly in my team, day in, day out, and in production, right? So the reason why there were sort of several intermediate stages is because things were discovered, bug fixes needed to come in, certain features needed to be tweaked. So I think now we actually have a pretty interesting story here around dataset deployments. That was basically the theme of most new features coming into RC2. You and I've looked into quite a few of those on previous tool talks. So let me just show what's actually new in this latest one. It's if we go in here, it's basically those ones and that one. So those 3 items are new. Everything else is inherited from prior pre-releases. And let me talk about number 56, because you can see this being number 56 as opposed to 200 plus. This is an issue that's been open for quite a while. And if you look into that, it's had quite a few inputs and discussions. And it's originally from December 2nd, 21. So it's been there over a year, basically. Windows has a limitation with respect to how long file paths can be. The default limitation is 260 characters, which for most cases is more than enough. But there are definitely scenarios where you get into limits, and specifically with respect to how pbi-tools extracts PBIX files, where for visuals, for instance, the visual title is translated into a folder name, you can end up with really deeply nested and very long paths if you're looking at visual level files. And if you then end up putting your project files into a folder structure that's already quite nested, then you actually get to the 260 character limits quite easily. And if you look through the history here, a lot of people encounter this. We even had a few other items like 185, 210, 224, which other people opened over the months, which were basically duplicates of that. So, I, as you can see down here, quite a few people already congratulated my closing message on this. So I put one solution in place. It's not ideal. There are some limits here, but it's one solution, and it's the sort of most supported solution, if you will. So basically, Windows 10, starting from version 16.07, which has been around for quite a long time, has a new functionality which you can opt into, which allows you to overcome the 260 character limitation. And it's a two-way opt-in, unfortunately. It needs to be done both by making a registry change, which is administrator only, I'm afraid. And it also needs to be done at the application level. So each application which wants to take advantage of long paths needs to actually compile differently in order to opt into the feature. And so that's what I've done for pbi-tools. If anyone out there wants to get the benefits, they need to do the other thing as well, which is actually setting a registry key. So if you look at the final message here, I'm linking to a Microsoft Docs article, which is basically the official article from Microsoft talking about the whole space and the various solutions around it. And specifically, they also have the registry key documented here, which you need to set. And so let me just show you what that looks like in practice. To demo this, I created this. Basically a crazy long path which allows me to easily run into the limitation, right? I've got a PBX file here, and in this tab, I've got an old I've got the previous version of pbi-tools, which, as you can see here, preview 6. So that's the version that until yesterday was the version out there, and that one does not have any specific support for long paths. So if I go into this folder and do pbi-tools extract, and then here we go. So basically the old version runs into this problem straight away, and you can see it's actually quite descriptive, right? It says path too long exception, specified path blah 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 are too long, right? So this is what previously would have happened. If I attempt the same thing with the new version in here, pbi-tools info, you can see this is RC2. Oops, right. So this is RC2, so that's the new version. The pbi-tools info output has a new setting here, which gives you complete transparency with respect to whether or not on your system that registry change has happened, right? So you can see long paths enabled true means I've got the user level registry setting. I also have the pbi-tools version that is long path enabled. If I then go into the same long folder and so I'm just gonna clear this. So basically, the previous attempt did create some stuff and then failed. I'm just gonna remove that. So if I then do pbi-tools extract, this will now no longer fail. There we go. The whole thing works with super long paths, right? And once again, requirement is that you make that registry change. If it can also be done using a group policy, by the way. But in any case, you need to get your administrator involved, I'm afraid. The other thing I would suggest, and that's also documented in the issue itself for the time being, this one here. Because as we've seen, each application basically needs to be aware whether or not you want to opt into that feature. So I would absolutely recommend that your Git client also gets long path enabled, which allows you to basically clone repos or update repos via Git, which happen to exceed your 260 character limits, right? So those things combined. So basically configure Git, make the registry setting, update pbi-tools, then you're good. And Windows behaves just like Linux, and you can go with really long paths. So that's one thing. And yeah, hopefully people find it useful. I think so, because as I said, there's been over the months and years, I've had a lot of sort of requests to get that fixed. All right, quick break here. Moving over to another one that is arguably a bug fix. So basically 219. That was an interesting one, which we encountered in my team. Basically, the pbi-tools core version, the one that's cross-platform, and which is the recommended version to use in a CI/CD scenario, did not compress PBX files when compiling them. We encountered an extreme example where the lack of compression actually made a really big difference. Turns out it was very easy to fix, but definitely something I needed to get sorted here. So let me show you again. So basically, let's go. Let's take those two files, and I'm just going to put them into a new folder. Here we go. 1 second. I'm doing that because I want to show you the old behavior. And for that, obviously, I need to make sure that the old tool can read the files without the path limitation. So if I go back to the old version, here we go. Right. And if I use the pbi-tools.core version, oops, pbi-tools. Sorry. There we go. Right. So I'm using preview 6, so the old version, right? So if I use that one to do a compile, with against this folder, and let's do out path. Let's call this preview 6.pbix. Here we go. Right. So this has now created a pbix file from those sources, and if I look here, we can see what's going on. So basically, the original file we had was 8.5 megabytes. We then extracted that, and then we recompiled it using the old core version, and it ended up being 52 megabytes. So quite a multiple of the original, right? And arguably, this is an extreme example. So this file happens to contain a large number of pages and visuals, and all these JSON artifacts basically add up to a lot of noise, right, when you don't compress them. So that's that. If we then switch here, again, that's the new version. So if I do pbi-tools.core info, we'll see this is RC2. There we go. So if I then do that one and do compile template and then outpath, and let's call this rc2.pbix and compile. There we go. That's interesting. Come on, work with me. Okay, that may have been a network problem. That version is actually stored on a network file share. So here we go. We've got this now. If I go back here, we can see everything now works as expected. Basically, this is the file that was just produced. In fact, it's slightly smaller even than the original one, 8.5 megabyte, which is expected. That again, there is no functional difference here. I mean, both files are equally valid. They have exactly the same content, but if you think about a CI/CD context, obviously, whether you're sending 52 megabytes or 8 megabytes over the wire to deploy them to Power BI service can make a difference, particularly when you're doing this at scale and with a large number of deployment pipelines or so. So yeah, those are two updates which are hopefully welcome. Other than that, everything else is just sort of an accumulation of all the dataset deployment related features that were in previous previews, which again we've covered before. I haven't managed, unfortunately, to do a comprehensive write-up as a blog post, so bear with me, that's coming. And I appreciate that is currently lacking, but it's on my radar, and obviously we've done various recordings over the past few months. One thing I can recommend in terms of documentation is if you go to issues and look for labels. I'm using the documentation label whenever either I end up sort of putting documentation into an issue as part of answering a question, or for other documentation related items. So those four, some of them ended up being, so here, this is what I wanted to show. So this one, for instance, that's definitely something which will ultimately move into a proper blog post and into proper documentation. Here ended up doing a complete listing of deployment manifest settings for reports. And because someone asked and I realized I had never actually published that other than by having some demo projects out there. So we've got this. Then in here, I was showing how to use the annotations exclude feature for models. So that, well, you can read the rest of the issue for context here, but it basically allows you to specify certain annotations by name, which should be excluded when a model is serialized, because some of those annotations are basically noise. They're not relevant for the model. This is just stuff that Power BI Desktop produces, and they end up changing a lot and create basically change sets with no value for you, right? So that's that. And then the other two, they're still open, so there isn't anything to be found here. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I've got in terms of news. Do we have any questions by any chance?
Not today, I think. It also was very clear. The first sign was like, oh, okay, the long pass, is it really such a problem? But yes, indeed, if you unpack the models, that the tools itself create the long pass. Quite a funny thing. I wasn't expecting this to be such a big issue.
Well,
But
it can easily happen for sure. And
Mm.
to be honest with you, the reason why I put this in here, because originally it was just going to be the bug fix in terms of the compression mode, but I was actually hit by the long path problem myself. And so I had a really good incentive, actually, because I knew what to do. So I had a really good incentive to go in and just put it out there. So if we look at this particular example, and I open this up in VS Code, and then you look into the report payload, you can see so if I copy the path here and then type it here, there we go. So this is a relatively long path, and this is actually starting from a very short base, right? But obviously, particularly in an enterprise context, people may have base folders which themselves are already quite long, right? And then you add this one to it, and you very easily get to 260. So that's pretty much where we're coming from, right? This is 160.
Yeah, lots of long names. Nice, and still nice that you are still fixing bugs and addressing some issues that are also quite old, and do not forget about them. Yeah, thanks a lot. So if anyone has any questions, just unmute yourself here in StreamYard or just in the chat. But if not, it was very clear, Matthias. Great stuff. So do we also have to expect some next steps of you, or is it still a secret? What you're doing next?
I'm afraid so, yes.
Okay. So if anyone wants to learn about the future of Power BI, I can recommend the Data Jazzers session with Miguel Myers. We both watched before. We attended there, and he also told us some new developments in terms of visualization and the handling of visual objects. So quite interesting. So maybe the this year will be quite interesting one in Power BI
Definitely.
terms.
Yeah.
But the last one was also for me, so don't mind. And of course, some great conferences are also before us, and we'll definitely make this again too when you have next updates or some questions or exciting tutorial stuff. You're always welcome, Matthias.
Looking forward
So
to it. Thanks very
last
much.
chance, 3, 2, 1, and thank you.
Bye.